According to the EPA, 75 million Americans fall ill each year from the buildings that they work in. In America, all chemicals are presumed innocent until proven guilty. What that means is that anybody can manufacture a new chemical. And by the way, over 80,000 new chemicals have been introduced into our everyday environment in the past 30 years.
Alan Bell is a leading environmental health expert and survivor who's dedicated his life to exposing the hidden toxins in our everyday lives and showing you how to fight back before they destroy yours.
When I wrote my book in 2017, I came up with the 10 most toxic chemicals and where they're located in your everyday life, and the 20 ways to modify your lifestyle and minimize your risk.
What are those 10 most dangerous chemicals?
You're listening to The Human Upgrade with Dave Asprey.
Alan, you went from busting the mafia to nearly being killed by your office building. What happened?
Well, the way you put it, it sounds pretty exciting. I was in South Florida back in the 1980s. I was an organized crime prosecutor back then, prosecuting the Colombian cartel drug rings and the mafia. And suddenly I moved into a new building. Back then I was living the American dream. New baby girl, new house, new cars, athletic, everything was great. And shortly after moving into the new building, I began getting some symptoms. I thought it was a cold. Then it felt like the flu. Then it got something far more sinister than that. I went from doctor to doctor all over the United States because it started getting worse and worse and worse. It got to the point where I was getting grand mal seizures. They needed to find out what was wrong with me. So what they ultimately found is they told me that it wasn't the mafia that had poisoned me, which they thought really was the most likely suspect because I had prosecuted them.
Right.
And in the course of that, investigation, I hired my investigators and they went through all aspects of my life to try and find out who poisoned me. They went to the movie theaters that I went into, the gymnasiums that I worked out in, the courthouse that I worked in, and then finally the building that I was working in. And you know what they found, Dave? They found out that other people in the building were falling ill as well. Our first thought was, why would the mafia want to poison them? They weren't prosecuting them. Well, as it turns out, it wasn't a thing that poisoned us, a person that poisoned us, but it was the actual building that we were all living in. It was a brand new building with new carpeting, new paints, new glues, new everything. And it was outgassing volatile organic compounds. And we were all breathing this stuff in. And I got to the point where it caused me to become hypersensitive to everything in the environment. Perfumes, colognes, hairsprays, automobile exhaust, newspaper print, whatever it was, trigger me to have grand mal seizures. So in an effort to save my life, they airlifted me into a bubble in the middle of the Arizona desert.
Wow.
800 square foot bubble, made out of glass, brick, and steel. No carpeting, no drapes, not even a bed. It was just something like a metal contraption that I would sleep on to basically sequester me from all environmental toxins, anything outgassing VOCs. And outside this bubble was only cactus, no roads, no schools, no people. It was isolated and desolate. And that's how I ended up. I'm tall like you. I'm 6'2", and I went down to 145 pounds in a wheelchair, tethered to an oxygen tank. And that's how I ended up.
Wow. Do they know which chemical did it?
Back then in the 1980s, they didn't have the technology that they have now. So they did not have the ability to isolate the specific chemical. But it was a chemical soup. It was like all kinds of different things. And, you have to remember, Dave, back in the 1980s, they were trying to save electric costs, energy. So they were making the buildings tight. They were sealing them up. They weren't bringing any fresh air that that they require now, according to the law. So we were breathing in everything and anything. We were breathing in the volatile organic compounds from the paints, from the carpeting, from the air fresheners, from the plastics outgassing.
Wow. It reminds me in my tech career in the, must have been like 1997 or something. I worked for the first tech company to build data centers. So when Google was 2 people and 2 computers, they were our customers, and we took off like crazy. So we remodeled a building right there on Great America Parkway in the middle of Santa Clara. Everybody moved in, same thing. It smelled like new cubicles, new furniture. I already had chemical sensitivity from toxic mold exposure, and it was debilitating. Red eyes, coughing, puffy. But it wasn't just me. Everybody's like, oh, I'm getting a cold. And I talked to our facilities manager, and his name was actually Tex. And I said, Tex, what's going on with this? He goes, well, we got all the air set up so 50% recycles to save money. And I'm like, do you think you could just turn that off and just like let us have fresh air in this sealed building? I was like, no, it wastes too much electricity. So I just kind of came in late for work and worked from home. But it was brain fog city. And I know I wasn't the only one. And you amplify that times 1 million structures in the U.S., it seems like this is a major issue. Are there standards for off-gassing for our workplaces or for our homes?
You brought up a very good point, and that is how widespread this issue is. According to the EPA, 75 million Americans fall ill each year from the buildings that they work in. And that doesn't even count illness coming from the houses that they're living in. These are just buildings that they're working in. But in answer to your question, there really are no standards in this country governing the amount of VOCs people are exposed to. New buildings are now required to have a certain number of air exchanges per minute. But in terms of measuring VOCs, there's no law. Now, there's a reason why there's no such laws, and we can get into that later.
It's not very expensive to get a small particulate meter and a VOC meter. It's $200-$300 for something like that, if I remember right. I've actually flown with one on airplanes, and you can see the volatile organics go up through the roof when you start smelling jet fuel when they're taking off. And you can see a lot of these hotels where they're actually spraying the signature scent. So when you walk into the lobby, it's literally a wall of endocrine disrupting toxins that affect multiple systems in your body. Why is it even legal to manufacture that stuff, much less to deploy it against our population?
That's the $1 million question. It's a long answer. I don't know if you'd like to hear it.
You're a legal expert. You are the one human who would understand this because you lived it and you fought it in court for so long.
Here's the deal. In America, all chemicals are presumed innocent until proven guilty. What that means is that anybody can manufacture a new chemical. And by the way, over 80,000 new chemicals have been introduced into our everyday environment in the past 30 years. 80,000.
What could ever go wrong?
So any Tom, Dick, or Harry could go in their garage, mix something up, introduce it into the marketplace. It's totally legal. Now, are other countries like this to this extreme? No, they're not. If you compare other countries like France, England, Germany, Sweden, Denmark, even Canada, as a general rule, those chemicals that are introduced into their environments are presumed guilty until proven innocent. So what does that mean if they're presumed guilty? That means that the government needs to basically give their okay before they're introduced into the marketplace. Not here. Any Chinese manufacturer could bring in toxic drywall and dump it into our chain of commerce. Any mother can go shopping for toxic baby diapers, toxic baby bottles. Even with BPA in it, it's all okay. Now, you might want to ask yourself, why is it okay? Because the average mother, the average American, they think if they walk into a store and they purchase something, that it must be tested and it must be okay. No. It's not. And here's why. Because big pharma, big agri, big chemical lobby Congress to keep the laws just the way they are. If you follow the money, you'll understand that if you regulate chemicals heavier than they're regulated now, it's going to cost manufacturers to basically produce these products at a much higher cost. So the cost is going to be borne by the manufacturer. They don't want that. For example, Apple will come out with a computer and they'll introduce it into the US and it'll have higher levels of VOCs than that same model introduced into, let's say Denmark. Why? Because Denmark has higher regulations. So they make the computer safer. So how does this affect Americans? Well, it affects us by consuming toxic products unknowingly. It also affects what happens when you get sick too, because big pharma, big agri, big chemical, they heavily influence the curriculum of medical schools. They donate lots of money to medical schools. And what does that mean? That means that doctors are really only taught how to treat illness. They're not taught how to prevent illness. So if you go into a doctor's office and let's say you have cancer, and the doctor says, okay, you have cancer. You have three choices. We could radiate it, we could chemo it, or we could cut it. What's your choice? And if you ask the doctor, well, why did I get it to begin with? Doctor says, I don't know. Why don't they know? They're not being taught this in medical school. Why are they not being taught it? Because the curriculum is influenced by big pharma, big chemical, and big agri. That's why all this is happening.
Even in some of the anti-aging medicine circles, they don't teach this stuff. But next year for my Biohacking conference, we're actually offering continuing education credits for doctors to talk about these environmental influences on how we perform and how sick we get. And one of the people who inspired me is Dr. Bill Ray out of Dallas, who is a legend in the environmental illness field. And I got to interview him in my toxic mold documentary. Because what I found is when we put chemicals in our buildings like this, we seal them up. We also cause the mold that's in the buildings to become more aggressive in response to the toxins. So you get a double whammy where you get Mother Nature toxins that shouldn't be in homes or in offices, and you get all the chemicals. And it's to the point that so many kids have ADHD that I believe is chemical and toxin mediated. We're looking for all these external factors. I think it might just be what they paint the school with, right? How do we sort all this out? It feels like there's so many different variables that the chemical companies can sort of dodge and weave and hide. It wasn't this chemical, it was that chemical, when it was really the combination.
Well, I think the root cause is we need to change the laws. Right now, the only remedy is to sue these people. And that's what I do. You and I complement each other. You're an advocate for treatment. You're an advocate for prevention. And I get these people, when they want the justice after they've been chewed up and spit out. I think that's a great thing that you're doing to have people, faculty go in and teach this in your seminars. I'm a adjunct professor of Boston University School of Neurotoxicology. and I'm also on the faculty of the University of Miami. And that's what I do. I teach medical students, how the environment impacts their patients' health. And why the heck do they need a lawyer to teach doctors? They should be teaching this in medical school.
Well, you're right. They do need to change the law. And I feel much safer now that they've blocked our ability to sue chemical manufacturers for making paraquat and spraying that on us, which is a pesticide or an herbicide, I forget. But it seems like Big Pharma has this idea, you can't sue me. I made a law that you can't sue me. And they're now spreading that evil into the big chemical industry, into the big ag industry, to the point that and that was a secret vote, by the way, so you don't even get to know what politicians sold us out. As an attorney who really understands the inner workings of this stuff, are you hopeful that our system is getting better, or are we actually just going to make it so there is no liability for poisoning people because it's easier?
I think as time goes on, it's getting harder and harder instead of easier and easier. You're seeing pieces of the pie being cut out more and more, where people are being limited and more in what they could sue. Bobby Kennedy was one of the original. Bobby Kennedy Jr. was one of the original lawyers on that case in San Francisco with the herbicide case, the huge verdict. And I've had the privilege of working with Bobby on different cases, different toxic tort cases as well. And I became so excited, when he was appointed the head of HHS, because if anybody could help turn this around, it would be him. But then again,
he's brilliant.
He's just one guy, in a system that's basically stacked against the little guy. And it's unfortunate. So I think that one way that people could fight this to help protect themselves and their families is to educate themselves on how they could live, how they can modify their lifestyle and minimize their risk and prevent themselves and their families from becoming another statistic. I know you touched on the widespread nature of human disease related to the environment. Try this on for size. 1 out of every 3 women are going to get cancer in their lifetime. And 1 out of every 2 men are going to get cancer in our lifetime. And 80% of all cancers, is caused by the everyday environment that you're exposed to in your home, your school, your workplace, and your community. That's pretty scary because this is preventable. If you arm yourself with knowledge, you can minimize your risk. And it's not just cancer. It's heart disease. It's no longer about diet and exercise. It's also about what you breathe and what you touch. And neurodegenerative disease, which I know you focus on that a lot, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS. I've had cases that I brought to court where people developed these neurodegenerative diseases, and we were able to prove in the courtroom that they were caused by an environmental exposure. It's no longer just about genetics. In fact, most of it is environmental. For example, Parkinson's, it's a rapidly growing neurodegenerative disease. 85% of all Parkinson's diseases are caused by the environment that you're exposed to. It's not a genetic disease. It's an environmental disease. It's alarming, really.
It's terribly alarming. And I learned for myself and then for others, there's a total toxic burden number on the body. And it's not that quantitative because depending on which toxins and which detox pathways you have active, the set of toxins that might make one person sick won't make you sick, but they increase your burden, right? So they make you weaker. And I walk around and I look at these well-meaning parents doing things that increase the toxic burden for no benefit. It drives me nuts. A case in point, Downy fabric softener, Right? It is a chemical bath of stuff that has no business being in your endocrine system. It has no benefit whatsoever. But people do it, right? And then they sleep on sheets covered in it, and they're absorbing it through their skin. And then they get up and they spray on their Axe body spray or Chanel No. 5. I don't really care. It's all the same stuff, right? And this is intentional toxin exposure. And they don't know that the bed that they laid on was made out of stuff that was also stopping their thyroid. But it feels kind of overwhelming because how are you supposed to run a house and you go to the grocery store and almost everything you can buy, except for maybe from a couple companies that your whatever Safeway doesn't have. What are we supposed to do to even know how to take one step?
That's a very good question. And we're a critical mass of like-minded people that want to make a difference in an issue that's so much bigger than us, so much bigger than us. There's only so much you can do. I mean, you're doing so many amazing things by bringing this to the awareness of millions of people, Dave, and doing your summits and doing your podcasts and what you're doing is really impacting a lot of people.
Thank you.
And I think another way to do it is through a form of entertainment. And we're developing a television series, okay, based upon my cases, okay? And every week is a different episode, or every season would be a different case of a person or a group of people that get sick or die from an environmental exposure. And this eccentric lawyer and his team identifies the problem, brings the bad guys to justice. And in fact, I should tell you that the producer that's attached to this is a guy by the name of Tony Eldridge. He is the founding producer of the Equalizer series, the Equalizer films starring Denzel Washington. Yeah. And this is not a plug. You didn't know this was coming. He loves your bulletproof coffee. He drinks it every day.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, there's so much of Hollywood does that. And the reason that butter and MCT oil in coffee works as well as it does is it affects bile flow and detox pathways, and the MCT that's in it affects mitochondrial function. And these environmental toxins are poisoning mitochondria. So your mitochondrial function goes down, and then you use the MCTs and just caffeine and all the other good stuff to crank it back up. And I don't know any group of people with more toxic exposure than Hollywood actors, except for maybe firefighters, right? And that's because they're on these temporary sets. I've been on set with lots of stars, and they're all guzzling butter and taking glutathione and all the things, and they feel like crap because they're constantly exposed to all the worst things on set. And it feels like these are expensive employees. They make millions and millions of dollars. You think they could buy an air filter on set, but they never do. What's going on there? Are the people who run these things just completely ignorant, or they don't care because there's another actor? Like, why would you do that?
It's ignorance. That's all it is. They're not stupid. They're ignorant. They don't have the knowledge to even understand what they're being exposed to. It's ignorance. And that's representative of what's going on all over the country. Some of the most intelligent people, doctors, lawyers, scientists, rocket tech people in Silicon Valley, unless you educate them, they have no idea.
It's true. I guess if you always feel bad, then that's just the normal state of things. You're not going to know you could feel better. And if you stop using, some kind of scented product, it's not going to change anything because you have 10 other ones that are just floating around. And if you get rid of all of them, when do you have that experience? Unless you do something intentional, it's kind of hidden.
Now, you mentioned Bill Ray. I was a patient of Bill Ray's.
I thought you might have been. It just made sense given the timing and how sick you were. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I went there and he had a leper colony in Texas, Seagoville, Texas. And I lived there as a leper. And, Bill was getting people with chemical sensitivity all around the world. And it's still happening. It's still
Oh,
occurring.
absolutely.
At least some governmental agencies now recognize it as a legitimate illness. The Medicare recognizes it as a legitimate illness.
You're saying multiple chemical sensitivity, or MCS, or fibromyalgia. Which one?
Multiple chemical sensitivity is recognized by the American Disabilities Act, okay? And also fibromyalgia. They both are. But mainstream doctors still have no clue.
So this is just a note for anyone who sees this video or listens to the show. If you or someone you know is just reacting to everything in the environment, you're not crazy. It's not all in your head. If your doctor doesn't know, find a doctor who does, because the most powerful words you can ever say to a doctor who won't provide you care are, "You're fired," because then you get another one, right? And you have a right to do that if they won't listen to you. But the vast majority of doctors, they want to help you. They want to heal. Being mad at your doctor doesn't do anything. But if you kindly and respectfully do your research, come in prepared, and they just blow you off, that's okay. Doctors are replaceable, but don't be pissed off at them when they don't deserve it, because most of the MCS or fibromyalgia people I've ever worked with, or toxic mold people, a very similar set of things, they're so exhausted, they cannot regulate their emotions very well. And they can't remember things because their brain is cooked. And I know mine was there, right? So they tend to be jerks and they feel bad about it. And they tend to be exhausted and they can't get motivated. They don't do what the doctor told them, all this stuff. So hats off to the doctors who care for that population, because they're the least compliant, hardest to deal with. How did you climb out of this for your own health?
Well, there's an academy called the American Academy of Environmental Medicine. And Bill Ray started that, as you know, right? And so if any of your viewers have MCS or anything like that, look up the closest doctor to you that's a member of that academy. But how did I climb out of it? I went all over the country. I tried everything and anything. And basically, I started taking a drug called Neurontin, which was gabapentin.
Yep.
And I'm still on it to this day. I was on huge doses, 4,800 milligrams a day, and I'm down to 1,200 a day. But that, in conjunction with safe house, safe food, I take saunas every other day. I work out, every single day. I take supplements. I think I could learn a lot from you to get the next step better. I've even tried exosomes. I've tried all kinds of stuff.
So you're a professor of neurotoxicology and all, and I'm going to say something that's probably a little bit inflammatory, and I want you to shoot holes in it or say, I think there's a letter missing from MCS, multiple chemical sensitivity. I think it should be MCAS, which stands for mast cell activation syndrome. And the common elements I've found with environmental illness, toxic mold, Lyme disease, long COVID, did I say fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, all these things is overactivation of the mast cell system, which is part of the immune system. And usually when you block that activation with various drugs, but it's usually things that are basic like Claritin or Pepsid, that people have dramatic recoveries. So are we all just really dealing with immune cells that are getting set off by environmental toxins because they're so bad for us? Our bodies are just trying to protect us.
Years ago, they came up with the term multiple chemical sensitivity because they had no idea what mast cells even were.
Right.
So now that science is catching up and they're seeing that, mast cell activation syndrome, could be a key to this whole thing. Claudia Miller, MD, PhD at University of Texas in San Antonio. She's a friend of mine. She's an ardent advocate of this. That mast cell activation is one of the primary underlying causes of all these garbage can diagnoses. And that's what they are, is garbage can diagnoses. Fibromyalgia is just a description of pain throughout your body. Chemical sensitivity is just a description of, you're hypersensitive to all these chemicals. But they still don't have the science to be able to pinpoint the accuracy that the mast cells are the sole cause of this whole problem. I happen to think that it's not that simple. I think it's part of the picture, but not the whole picture. Because the immune system, the nervous system, and the endocrine system, they're compartmentalized. But really, the holistic being, they're all intertwined with each other. You can't just say, it's this, it's just an immune problem, or this neurological problem, or this endocrine problem. They all overlap. You mentioned that if somebody takes Claritin, that their histamine levels go lower, and therefore it holds this, this disease at bay. So mast cells, when they get excited, okay, and when they're unstable, they basically release hundreds of different toxic chemicals into the body.
Exactly.
The mast cells are the immune system's warning system, is saying, alarm, alarm. There's an invader that's come into the body and we need to attack it. Okay. 1,000 years ago, the only invaders were biological, but now they're chemical. So the ancient immune system is basically misfiring against chemicals and causing these chemical releases into the body, thinking it's going to kill the organism that's invaded it, but it's not an organism that's invading it. It's a chemical, so it's not going to kill a chemical. So histamine is only one of hundreds of chemicals that are released by the mast cells. Another chemical that it releases is called prostaglandin. And these antihistamines won't touch prostaglandins. So you need to take another type of a mast cell stabilizer that just doesn't target histamines, but basically tries to stabilize the mast cell. And I take that. It's called
Cromolyn.
Ketotifen.
Ketotifen, yeah.
Right. Yeah. If I took cromolyn, it didn't do anything for me because I'm spewing out prostaglandins. And, you could get 10 people with, mast cell activation, and they'll be spewing all the different types of chemicals into their blood. Now, I represent these mold victims, and, almost all of them have mast cell activation. And I call in expert witnesses to explain to a jury in layman terms what it is and why it's destroying these victims' lives from mold.
I love your description there. And I think of these mast cells as landmines. So they're supposed to only blow up when a tank rolls on them, but now a puff of air sets it off. And when it blows up, it's not just histamine 1 and histamine 2 that comes out of there, or histamine that activates 1 and 2. It's, like you said, hundreds of things, all the inflammatory cytokines that some of our audience knows about. And then because they're so sensitive, a little bit of chemical sets it off. And then it creates this rolling thing where this mine went off and set off that mine, set off that mine. So you get these flushing, you get the hives, you get the brain fog, you get the seizures, all those things. And when you lower the exposure surface of things that can trigger it, it helps people more. So even if the primary thing is prostaglandin or any of these other cytokines, just by lowering the net number of them, it turns out for a lot of people, they get relief from the histamines. And then when you get into it, you can talk to some really heavy-duty mast cell doctors like this. And ketotifen is also a common thing. And from a biohacking perspective, like, okay, reduce toxin exposure, right? Set up your environment so it's less stressful. Improve your mitochondrial function, because underlying all of this, the Treg cells, everything, it's all mitochondrial, and the mitochondria are being poisoned. And I suspect, but I can't prove, that's part of why the body's like, it's looking for what is the poison, and it's not finding it with immune things from bacterial surfaces or fungal surfaces. It says, all right, I know I'm being poisoned. I don't know what it is. So I'm going to just make my immune reactivity so strong that I know you're going to find it. Kind of like a pregnant woman. Everything makes them nauseous because it's like, don't expose me to that. I got a baby in here. But when we're overexposed, we get that same stuff. And the symptoms can be from what you had, seizures. My mother had seizures, still does actually, that I think are triggered by some things like that, to ADHD, to neurocognitive things, to profound changes in personality, even some schizophrenia and bipolar. You give people a little whiff of this chemical and they think they're Jesus, right? None of these people is crazy. All of them have things going on. And the uniting element is chemicals, toxins, and mitochondria. When you peel every layer away that's left, that's all I can find. And a lot of the biohacks are stronger mitochondria, stronger mitochondrial networks. And when we start doing that, our resilience to everything goes up. But why should we have to do that when it's so simple to make a cleaner environment? And thank God you're doing the legal work you're doing on holding companies accountable. And also that you've been able to do the work on yourself to bring in, you found a pharmaceutical that worked for you. Imagine if everyone who had these kind of symptoms, my numbers say 100 million people in the US are dealing with this at one level or another, from Moldy Movie, my documentary on toxic mold. By the way, have you seen Moldy? Are you aware of it?
It was great.
Okay, cool.
It was
awesome.
great, yeah.
I wanted to point you to it. And guys, if you're listening, moldymovie.com, completely free. It's a documentary that did feature Bill Ray as well as many others like Daniel Amen, just talking about this is real. But what you're using is this drug called gabapentin that reduces nerve sensitization. Underlying all that, it's mitochondria. Like all nerves are powered by mitochondria, right? And so you found the combination that works. And I'm guessing you're managing it every single day, right?
That's right.
I manage my stuff probably 10% of what I used to do just by building resilience through biohacking. But it has required, I don't talk about this on the show, it has required understanding signaling networks in biology they do not teach in medical school, or if they teach it, they probably teach it wrong. Understanding epinephrine and dopamine and norepinephrine and blood pressure and how all of these are variables that can set off this thing. And I was working with a dear friend. She has environmentally triggered cyclical vomiting syndrome, which means every 6 weeks for 3 days, she vomits every 20 minutes and has destroyed her productivity. And it's gone after one conversation with a few supplements that regulated systems that aren't the ones we're talking about. And then it came back a little bit, but it's like, oh, now I have the tools. She turned it off mid-thing. So all of a sudden, it's like I got my life back. And I've seen this thousands and thousands of times in the biohacking community. People who are literally like, I have no reason to live. I cannot function in the world. And I was one of those people. I bought disability insurance at 26. And to be able to have the tools to say, it's more work than it was, but I can manage this and I just know what to do. That's one of my big missions, guys. Like, if you feel this way, probably do this. And it seems like AI is going to really, really change that. I'm working on some tools for people. Are you finding AI is helping you personally with environmental illness?
I haven't really used it much.
Oh, that'll change your life. It's so good because you already know so much. You understand neurotoxicology. Just, in fact, I literally, as we were talking, I'm like, hey, ChatGPT, mine's tuned to treat me like a PhD biologist and a bunch of other stuff. And I'm like, talk to me about the mast cell effects of gabapentin. And it says, well, there are some studies showing that it's a substance P-mediated lowering of mast cell degranulation. I'm like, oh, substance P. There's a whole bunch we can do around this. The primordial threat sensing molecule that single cell bacteria have in response to environmental chemicals. And substance P is what capsaicin, that, spicy cream you rub on for arthritis, it's depleting your substance P. Substance P stands for pain. It's like, oh, we're doing that. So that opens up this whole other avenue. Okay, ChatGPT, what can I do around substance P modulation? And if you asked it that, it would probably tell you, look at the alignment of your bite. Because a misaligned bite, if you grind your teeth, it's going to crank up your substance P levels and your chances of getting a grand mal seizure will go up. And like, what? All these pathways I didn't know. So the speed of biohacking for me is 10 times what it was before. And it's so cool.
Wow. That's really cool.
So I gotta take an evening. I know you're working and you're helping a lot of people with the cases you're working on, but just take an evening and sit down and be curious with your incredible knowledge of all this and just ask away. And you may find, oh my gosh, there's that other drug I didn't think about that just unlocks it.
You want me to ask you something?
No, I want you to go to ChatGPT tonight or whatever your favorite thing is and just sit down, because you have this great brain. You've studied this for so long. Just turn it around and say, I now have the world's best expert witness who understands all biology, and tell it to act that way. Say, explain this, and just be curious like you would if you're cross-examining someone, and just go deep. And you might find, wow, like there's so much potential for anyone listening to the show. Say, hey, AI, I want you to chat. I want you to stack rank which of these chemicals, or which chemicals I'm likely exposed to that would be triggering these symptoms. Tell me just from a likelihood. It'll tell you in order: number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and then go through your house and eliminate those. And if you don't know where those are, you say, hey, I don't know where to find formaldehyde in my house. Here's the brands I like, or here's a picture of my room. Tell me where I'm going to find it. It'll just tell you, and it's right there. And then you go through and you throw all that crap out, and you go, that does smell bad. And you wake up the next morning and you feel better. And your eyes aren't red. And like we can all do this. And you couldn't do this a year ago.
That's right. And it's going to get better and better. I mean, when I wrote my book in 2017, I came up with the 10 most toxic chemicals and where they're located in your everyday life, and the 20 ways to modify your lifestyle and minimize your risk. But that's compared to AI, that's nothing, right?
What are those 10 most dangerous chemicals?
Acrylamide, atrazine, benzene, bisphenol A, PFCs, that's long chain perfluorinated chemicals, methyl tert-butyl ether, which is MTBE, percolates, phthalates, and then PCDEs, which is polybrominated diphenyl ethers, and short chain chlorinated paraffins. Now you might want to say, well, where are these located? Well, the acrylamides, they're located in food packaging, cosmetics, disposable diapers. They're in barbecue food, fast food restaurants. They're created when you fry your foods. They're also ingested from tobacco smoke, drinking water, and touching products that contain them. I mean, I could go on and on and on. But all of these chemicals, like atrazine, okay?
That's a big one.
More than 70 million pounds of this chemical is used as an agricultural pesticide, and they're sprayed in our croplands each year. And most of it is to protect corn, okay? And the workers inhale it, they absorb it, and we eat it when we eat corn. Benzenes, it's in petroleum products, coal products. It basically affects your brain, fatty tissue. It kills pregnant women. It goes across the placenta. The bisphenol A is commonly found in eyeglass lenses, automobile parts, CDs, food containers, plastic dinnerware, toys. I mean, I could go on and on and on. We have a handout. Maybe you could display it on your, yeah.
It sounds, a lot of people I know, kind of their eyes roll back on their head like, this is too much. I can't deal with it. The important lesson here is perfection is not required. You just want to lower your burden, right? And not be stressed about it. Like, okay, I'm going to do my best. The one that really astounds me is atrazine. Is that allowed to be sprayed in other countries?
Some countries, yes. Some countries, no.
How about China? Do you know?
Probably. I mean, I went to law school at Oxford University as an exchange student. So we got to study what European law is compared to U.S. law. And U.S. law is far more lax than European law. China, probably anything goes.
You're right. They do allow atrazine. They don't allow paraquat, though, but they actually manufacture it and send it to us. And they just passed a law last week via a hidden vote that says that we can't sue the companies selling paraquat, which causes Parkinson's in studies. And it's not even legal to spray it in China, which is where the country that makes this comes from. And I don't have a problem with China whatsoever, but I do have a problem with a company based in a country being allowed to spray a poison on my country that they can't spray in theirs. And that would be a very easy EPA or other type of law to pass that says no company globally can sell a product in the US that's illegal in its own country.
Amen. And you mentioned, there's basic things that you can do. I mean, you're not going to get perfection. You're not going to live in a bubble like I did for almost a decade. But you could do just basic things to modify your lifestyle and minimize your risk. I mean, I listed 20 basic things and that'll be in the handout. I mean, food, eat organic food, simple. Water, drink filtered water, but not out of plastic. Make it out of metal, glass, containers, indoor air. Use filtered, 90% of our air is inside. You know this better than anybody else. Use HEPA filtered filtration, personal care products. Don't use ones that have parabens in it and all kinds of chemicals that you can't pronounce. Cookware, don't use the non-stick cookware. Use metal. Use glass. If you're going to use plastics, stay away from, BPA. If you can, use metal instead. Like you said, laundry products, unscented, just by using unscented and undyed detergents, which is everywhere now. Okay. Mm-hmm. You'll save your body an enormous amount of stuff. Home cleaning products, go to Whole Foods, go to places where it's fragrance free, chemical free, preservative free. Clothing, wear natural clothing, wear wool or cotton, avoid synthetic clothing. Dry cleaning, try not to use dry cleaning, but if you have to use dry cleaning, go to a place that has wet or carbon dioxide cleaning processes. It's not as bad. Pesticides, stay away from them. If you got termites in your house, use microwave. You hire a company that microwaves your house instead of poisoning your house. Use boric acid for ants or cockroaches. Furniture, don't use particle board in your furniture. Use solid wood. Don't use flame retardants. Here's a biggie that you mentioned, bedding. Dave, all they got to do, you spend a third of your life in bed, okay? All you got to do is buy an organic cotton bed with no flame retardants in it, and you're going to basically avoid a huge burden in your life. If you have to paint your house, go into any paint store and ask for 0 VOCs. Okay.
This is the best list ever. And I have a shout out for Essentia mattress. I actually co-designed a mattress with them. It's a foam mattress that truly has nothing in it. They use a Kevlar coating so that it meets flame retardant standards with 0 flame retardant in it. It can be done. That's an expensive mattress, but it works better than any other bed you'll see that have toxins or don't. And I got into this because years ago, I bought a mattress topper, a memory foam one, and I went to sleep on it. My partner at the time went to sleep on it. We both woke up the next morning and she had profound anxiety. Actually, I had to call the hospital, a panic attack. Like we took her to the hospital and they gave her benzos. And I had the most profound spinal and muscular. It was just the stink coming off that crappy foam from some manufacturing plant somewhere. And I figure if people did half what's on your list, fix your mattress. And I'll put the link for Essential on there, or any organic cotton thing you want to do. Just make sure you have something that seals it from water if it's cotton, because cotton will mold, and a moldy mattress that's bad news. But you have that. Okay. That's a third of your life. Get a HEPA air filter for your bedroom. Okay. That's also a third of your life. And get a whole house water filter that does a half-assed job in an RO unit. And then don't buy anything with perfume or chemicals to the best of your ability. If you just did that, even if you still cook on Teflon, which is a bad idea, it's okay. But a third of your life, you can do it and you'll feel so much better. It won't feel that hard to do the next step.
And then the other things are buy the supplements that Dave recommends. And he didn't tell me to say this. And detoxify yourself. Go into a sauna. Go into a hot bath with dead sea salts in it to draw the poisons out of you. Floor covering. Don't use carpeting. Yeah. Use hardwood or tile. I mean, this is simple stuff.
My house is entirely hardwood, and I buy wool rugs because wool is biodegradable. It's normal. And that's it. Like, there is nothing synthetic. You just don't need it.
Exactly.
I have a thought for you. I just had some guys here for the episode I recorded before you from a company called Mara Labs, and they're just sitting on my desk, which made me think of it. Do you know about Brock Elite?
No.
So I didn't either until about a year and a half ago. So there's 3 detox processes that happen for most things. You got to bind to something and make it water soluble, then transform it through oxidation and excrete it. They found a broccoli extract, sulforaphane, that's activated by another chemical that does all 3 stages of detox, which glutathione only does the middle one, for instance. And I've noticed a massive difference from that. So just for your personal use, I will ask those guys to send you some if you want.
What's it called?
It's called Brock Elite, BROC Elite.
I'm always searching. I get calls from people all around the country that want to sue because they've been injured. And
there's 10 years of good science behind coming up with that. It's not, the average supplement out there. And I've known those guys for a while, and I've just got the idea what is sitting on my desk because I just interviewed them. But when we're talking about reducing toxin exposure, you also have to get better at excreting. So glutathione and calcium D-glucarate are 2 of the supplements I've talked about for many years. Activated charcoal. This is something that kind of combines 3 different pathways, and it's become a part of my stack for detoxing, especially on airplanes and in hotels. What do you do when you fly and when you're in a hotel in order to stay healthy?
I don't. My practice began to boom as a result of COVID because, in these legal cases, you could do almost everything. You could take depositions on Zoom. You could have hearings on Zoom. And as a result of that, I'm able to have cases all over the country without even having to travel.
That's got to be life-changing because with the environmental sensitivity that you still have, you just don't need to get on airplanes. It was debilitating for me in my late 20s. I remember I wanted to travel for business, and I would get places my brain was cooked, and I was just like in a fog. And I'm to the point now I travel 60, 70% of the time.
Wow.
I don't get sick anymore.
Good for you.
Like I take 150 supplements a day, and I know my body, but I never in my wildest dreams imagined having this kind of resilience. And it's one thing that motivates me every day to teach biohacking, because if I can do this, I didn't have to live in a bubble, but I would have if you'd have offered it to me the way you did, because it was so bad. And I'm forever grateful. And on that rare occasion, like, wow, something's off. It's like, I just have to tweak it. But I don't want to be an expert in this. I had other stuff to do, but I am an expert in this. So I might as well share it.
That's great. You're doing a lot of good things for a lot of people that have nowhere else to turn to, for help. And I really commend and admire and respect what you've done and what you continue to do for many people.
Thank you, Alan. And likewise, continuing to help people. There's a feeling of helplessness that comes from this. Like, I didn't do anything. My usually a doctor or a landlord or a company is they're gaslighting you, right? Because saying it's all in your head. And I had the same thing. And maybe you should try to lose weight. I'm like, did you not hear the part about exercising 90 minutes a day, 6 days a week on a low-fat diet for 18 months straight before I came to you? No, they didn't hear it because it couldn't be possible. And it just, it can be enraging for people. And I would just say, for listening to this, it's okay to be pissed off, but it's not okay to be pissed off that people are actually going to help you. And Alan, you've done a lot of work legally for people. But I got to ask you, what's the ugliest truth about the chemical industry that no one will say out loud?
Money, greed, power, control. If you follow the money, which is what I do in every single case, you will find that people are injured because of greed. That's all it's about. That's the bottom line. And in these cases, you've got people that are dead, you've got people that are injured, and you got to find out who did it and why. And the why is always about money, 100% of the time. And, when I was a prosecutor, I represented the state of Florida. And the victims were, individual victims who were, victimized by murderers, rapists, drug cartel people. But in this type of law that I'm doing, it's motivated by money. You know, if someone would describe me, they would say I was a very skeptical person. And I am. And the reason why I am is because I've seen the underbelly of what you just asked me. As a result of this, more people get sick and die from environmental exposure than all those afflicted with AIDS, accident, war, crime, and COVID combined. It is the silent epidemic of the 21st century. And it converts into, you see it manifesting in cancer, heart disease, neurodegenerative diseases like we were talking about. So this is such a widespread problem. And it's all about money. That's all it's about. You know, the people come to you to try and prevent themselves from becoming another statistic. The people come to me when their lives have already been destroyed. So you have a happier, a happier vocation that, you know, than I do. We've got to do something about it. And, we are doing something about it. And, the more you could use mass media, whether it's entertainment, movies, television shows, talk shows, podcasts like with the one we're on now, books, however you could reach the masses. I mean, like I said, even Bobby Kennedy, he's just one person. He's the head of the whole, you know, HHS. You'd think if he could, you know, make his magic wand go, he could completely revamp everything, but he can't. No one person can do it.
It requires a lot of support. I've had the honor of having dinner with him and going deep, and what a brilliant mind. But the only way I can think of, because the EPA is working against the FDA, which Bobby controls, but the FDA can put allowable chemical levels in food. So even if the EPA says, oh, it's okay to spray that crap everywhere, the FDA could say it's not okay to sell it to people. And I hope that's the end run around the EPA, because right now the EPA is going the wrong direction and the FDA is going in the right direction. It's a little scary. So I have a question for you then. You understand the system really well. And if you had that magic wand and you could pass one law today to protect generations down the road, what would it be? It
would be that any chemical that's put into the chain of commerce be tested, and the manufacturer or the distributor that's manufacturing this product, they have the burden of proof to show why that chemical is safe before it could be put into products. Put the burden of proof on them. The way it is now is it's the opposite. You could, like I said before, you could put it in anything and anything goes.
Burden of proof and liability that comes with it might be helpful.
Well, they do have liability. And what happens is, this is part of the underbelly of this thing. What happens is they come out with a chemical, right? And then we prove in court that it's toxic. Okay. What they do is, first of all, it's proven in court in a single case or in a class action. The government's not involved in this at all. So a private party or private parties need to get together and spend all this money and convince a jury that this chemical is toxic. Okay. And then once that happens, what do? The manufacturer tweaks the product, opens up a new company across the street with a slightly different chemical composition and starts the ball rolling all over again. And they'll get another 10 or 20 years out of it. So they do have liability, but you have to prove liability in court. If you make it a law that they have to actually show that it's safe before they're allowed to sell it and put it in products, that'll cut this thing off right now.
Wow. Absolutely love it. Ellen, you're doing some really powerful work in the world, just representing people who need the help. So thank you for writing your book and for just staying on this for so long. AlanBell.me is your website, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Is there anywhere else you'd like to send people to find more about your work?
On the website, there's also a phone number that you can call up if you need to talk to somebody, and an email address too, by the way.
Awesome. Guys, I'm serious. If you're having all the weird health stuff and no amount of biohacking seems like it's getting you anything above treading water, if you know what happened, there's a possibility to go after the people who did it, or at least to get some help. And Alan is 100% working for the good guys.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
See you next time on the Human Upgrade Podcast.